we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a very, very full tip session for you. I'm super incredibly excited. I did not realize how much I miss all of you until I did not see you for a full month, and I was trapped inside my home with all my kids for like, it seems like 5 years. And so it's really good to see you guys. And so to start off, I wanted to share with you a brief story, which I call What's in the Box. And here's how this story starts. This story started on January 14th, 14 days ago, in which David Amon sent me an email that says, from David, how long has your lunchbox been in the refrigerator? Are you culturing some vaccinations and keeping them cold? Do you want me to dispose of anything? I replied, holy crap, I didn't know it was in there. You don't have to go through it. Everything in it can be thrown out. Thank you for letting me know. And then I got another message from David today. Chris,
it's the first day he's
from the fridge and
it's
take
the
it
first
home.
day he's back in the office.
So I just wanted to share this story of what's in the box. So I went to my lunchbox today, pulled it out of the fridge. I have no idea what is in this lunchbox. All I know is it has been probably sitting there since September.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those terrible people. I opened the box. That was my lunch. Totally forgot it existed. Absolutely the most least healthiest thing you can pack. As you can tell, Christopher McClung packs his own lunch. Mrs. McClung does not. And everything in here was expired, which is very sad, including this bag of Fritos was expired, and really made me sad that that snack pack was expired. But I will let you know that this fruit lather did not have an expiration date on it. So I tasted it, tried it out, seemed to be okay. If you see me pass out at some point during this session, you know why. So that is what I call what's in the box.
But wait, that cheese does not look molded. I see under them 12 grams of protein, that cheese is still orange.
Well, the thing
like
is it was actually white cheese. You just now are seeing it. I'm just kidding. No, I think it was still orange, but yes, it had an expiration of December 2020 on it, so I didn't want to risk it. All that being said, what's in the box? Thank you for coming to tip, and give you guys yourselves a hand. You are here. You have survived the first 2020 or the year 2020. We are now in 2021, and with that, we have some new people joining us today, and they are Mr. Chris Barta. He is our welding instructor, also teaches at Colton High School, and he is coming on as a CRY-ROP teacher mentor for the Colton and adult educators. Scott Rain is here. He is our marketing and business instructor from Citrus Valley. He is also helping us mentor the Redlands teachers. And then Ashley Rain is here as well, one of our medical instructors, or our medical instructor at Yucaipa High School. And she is mentoring our middle school teachers and our Yucaipa High Schoolers. So if you could take a brief second to give them a raging round of applause, welcome them to our tip family. And you guys can't hear, but you can all see, we are excited to have you. So I'm gonna ask you three, if you could unmute really quick. And Chris, Scott, and Ashley, if you could pick a number between 1 and 10.
10.
Was that
7.
Scott? All right.
1.
Okay.
I said
Ashley?
7.
7. So Chris?
1.
1. All right. So I'm going to ask you guys each a question. Chris will go first, then Ashley, then Scott. Chris, here is your question. Is cereal soup? Why or why not?
Repeat the question, please.
Is cereal soup? Why or why not?
Yes, it is. It's cold soup, like gazpacho.
Okay, very good. So now you know Chris Barta officially says cereal is soup. Next time somebody asks you for a bowl of soup, give them a bowl of Wheaties. All right, next question. Ashley, if animals could talk, which would be the rudest?
Which would be the rudest? Warthogs. I don't know. Potbelly pig, so I'm gonna go with the pig family. I don't know. And they can be loud and rude, so there you go.
I could see that. We won't tell that to Pumbaa, but I could totally see that. Well done. Scott, last question. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Why or why not?
What a question, man. Yes. Yes, it's a sandwich because it's between bread. So that's perfect.
Okay, very cool. Melissa Dix would completely disagree with you because she says if you can't put lettuce and tomato on it, it is not a sandwich. But then I have to ask, what about peanut butter and jelly? Because that would be gross. Awesome. Well, again, give them a round of applause. We're all glad you guys are here to join us. Those of you, most of you have already had meetings with them and have talked with them, and I know they're going to do a fantastic job supporting you as you guys are continuing this school year. And so next up, we have an icebreaker. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in random groups, and what you have to do is you have 5 minutes to find something that represents every letter of the alphabet. For example, an apple or a book or a crayon, but you guys have to work together. Not one person can find all the objects. You guys need to help find stuff together. So you have 5 minutes to do that. I will set the timer. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. All right, so on your marks, get set, and go.
What is it?
All right.
A zipper.
I have a zipper.
Ah.
All right, so does anybody think they have all the objects? Any group want to share?
We do.
Give me a thumbs up if you found everything.
I don't know, but we'll try.
All right, so Ashley, let's have your group share. What did you guys come up with?
Hey guys, who's A? Hi, Jerry.
I'm A, and I couldn't find no A.
Apple, I have it. You want to see it?
For B, I have book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For C, I have a cake. I have a cake.
Okay, did not expect that.
For D, I have a dog. I'm not going to pick up my dog. She weighs too much, but I have a dog.
We'll trust
And
you.
for E, I couldn't find anything.
Okay.
I have an egg.
Oh,
An egg.
I have edamame beans in my freezer.
Ear.
Okay.
I have
an ear.
edamame in my freezer.
You
And
have
an
an
ear
ear.
on your head.
Yeah, I have an ear. Thank you. I have an ear on.
Anybody else in the group? What'd you guys get?
What's F? Who has F?
A flag,
Rodney's
There you
got
go,
a
Rodney.
flag.
something green,
Uh-huh.
ice cream scoop. And I didn't get anything for H.
Anybody have H? Hat? She's got a hat. All right.
I have
Ice.
ice in my cup.
There you go.
J. And juice.
Okay.
K.
I have that too, Chanel. I don't know. They can't see it. It's ketchup.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go down there, Larry. L for lotion. M.
Okay.
N.
She's got mayonnaise.
Okay, so N, I have a napkin. O, I have compressed oxygen. P, petroleum jelly. Q.
We're almost there.
Q. Oh, me. I'm a queen. There. Oh, R. Ruler. Bam.
We had scissors.
Stapler.
Scissors. Stapler.
We have tape.
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 Umbrella,
Uh-huh.
Valentine's vase,
Ah.
Oh my.
water,
Whisk.
A whisk. Good.
Nice. You had whisk.
We have X-rays. We have X-rays.
Where do you have X-rays? Nice.
Dan has X-rays.
That's
Why?
one of the structures from USC.
yellow lemon,
And we're almost there.
lemon zest.
We
There
have
it is.
zippers.
Well done. Well done. That is absolutely incredible. And again,
Oh.
yes, David.
Yo-yo.
And a yo-yo. Absolutely incredible. Good job, you guys. You can totally, another something you can do with your students, just send them off. So go find something for every letter of the alphabet and see what they come up with. Somebody might pull a cake out of their bedroom. You would never expect it. Right. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Amon. Oh, I'm sorry. So our agenda for today, almost forgot that part, is we're going to do a quick check-in. Usual, I'm just going to drop the links into chat for you guys to check in on what your credential status is. Some of you have completed your credential. Yay. Some of you have started your credential. Fantastic. And some of you are almost on the way or you're on the way there. And so it's very cool to see how well you guys are doing and how much you've gone into it. And then secondly, we have Dr. McNair is with us today. She's going to speak with us about ethics and diversity. We'll get into that a little bit later. Then we'll take a break. And then Chanel, Christian, and Mary are going to present to us CSTP number 4. But before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Amon.
So Chris is going to put us in breakout rooms real quickly here. And just a couple questions to ask. How was your winter break? And what is one goal you have for the semester? So he'll give you 8 minutes in the breakout room. Be ready to share out as well too. How was your winter break? And what is one goal you have for the semester?
I am elated to introduce you to our guest presenter for this month, and this is Dr. Cassandra McNair. She is the coordinator of special education for the Perris Union High School District, and she was also my professor at Redlands, University of Redlands this last semester, and I took with her, I can't remember the formal name, diverse populations, but it is a class, and I'm not just saying this to say it, it is a class that entirely changed my perspective on how I view students, my perspective on how we view the world. And I went out and bought White Fragility. My wife and I are both reading it right now. And she's just a phenomenal educator, and I'm just very privileged to have her with you guys. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to her, give her a warm round of applause, and she's going to speak to you this morning or this afternoon. And so Dr. McNair, the floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. I am going to just jump right in because I don't have that much time, but I really want to ensure that you all get the most out of what I'm going to present today. Chris will send out the PowerPoint once I'm finished so that you all can have it to refer back to. There's some links in there and just kind of some things to think about so you can go back to it later on. So he will send that out to you all when we finish up today. So yes, I'm a coordinator of special ed for the Perris Union High School District. I've been there for almost 2 years. Prior to that, I was a principal for 8 years. Hey, Scott, a principal for 8 years, and I also was a special ed teacher for most of my career. I did get my doctorate from the University of Redlands in educational justice, which is like a social justice / educational degree, where I really looked into the differences of how students are treated and how parents have to navigate the school system when they have a minority student with a disability. And so I do a lot of work that surrounds equity and inclusion. And I just taught the class for Chris for leading in a diverse community. And we all know that literally we can look around the world and it's becoming more and more diverse. And literally we can think about equity in the classes that we offer to our students and the way that our classes are set up and the way that principals and administrators look at master scheduling. And then I also have a host of stories that I've experienced in my own personal life and in my educational journey. I'm finishing up my 18th year in education this year. And so I've seen the pendulum swing quite a bit just in these 18 years in education. So I'm gonna jump right in. And so when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want you to kind of think about those 3 things. And so when thinking about diversity, inclusion, equity, we can all think about like mission and vision statements that they scream like We want to be diverse and we want to be inclusive and we want to ensure equity. But does anyone really know what those things are? I mean, it's just like one of those things, like you see these buzzwords and it's like equity buzzword here, and we want to include all students, and all students need to go to college, and you know, all of this, and you're just like, well, we're not going to do this activity. But I wanted you to kind of think about those buzzwords, because I don't want to waste my time. All right, so in thinking about these three things, so cultural diversity is where we have these different cultures that respect each other's differences, you know, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical abilities, religious beliefs, political beliefs, or other ideologies. And we can think of so many different ideologies that we all carry. And so sometimes I think when people think about culture and diversity, they automatically go to race, because it's something that you can see, even though we know that race is not a biological construct, but it is something that really sticks out to us. Like when I showed up on this screen, you can clearly see I'm an African-American female. You know, I can't take that away from what you see, but what you don't see are the dimensions of my ethnicity, are the dimensions of my sexual orientation, what my socioeconomic status is. You can make assumptions, but again, you can't see it, which is why I think that people go straight to race. Now, equity is justice according to natural law or right. It's when you're having a freedom of bias or favoritism. And so when you think about equity in that way, you're just like, oh, I'm not biased. But if you've ever taken an implicit bias test, you know that everyone carries a certain level of bias in one way or another. And it's usually found and housed in that area of cultural diversity. When you think about the term inclusion, the first thing that I think of being a special educator is, oh, I want my special education, or my students that identify as special education, I want them included in the general education classes. But really, it's any environment where a student can feel welcome, respected, where they're supported as a fully participating member. And I know that all of you as teachers, you want to ensure that your classrooms are those things. So those are those characteristics that you want in your particular class. And so when we just dive a little bit deeper into culture and historical context, a culturally proficient environment, again, we're thinking of cultural inclusion or cultural diversity, inclusion and equity, all wrapped together in one, produces a culturally proficient environment. And it acknowledges and it responds to individual and group differences. And so many of you are thinking, well, how do I even do that in my classroom? Like, what does that even look like? Because I think I do a darn good job with, you know, ensuring that my students have what they need. And I'm sure you do. But one thing that I want you to realize is that culturally proficient environments, it doesn't happen after a 2-day workshop. It's not going to just happen by osmosis after this presentation, but it is definitely something that you can work towards as you commit to this work. So let's just dive a little bit deeper into culture. So culture is, again, this complex whole that includes knowledge, beliefs, art, law, morals, customs, or any other habits that are acquired by a member of society. All right, so many of us have shared cultures, and just to bring it down to base level, my grandma had this culture where she could not go to bed if there was a dish in the sink. And that is a culture established in our house. You know, you don't go to bed if there's trash in the trash can and a dish in the sink. And so that is something that's shared, that literally now my mom imposed that culture on me. And now I have imparted that piece of culture on my children. Now, did it take some time? Of course it did. But again, it's just one of those things that it's complex. But again, looking at me, as an African American female, you would know that that culture even existed. And so what I'm saying as far as having a culturally proficient environment, it's the complexities that's shared amongst groups. It could be in their race or ethnic culture. Right now, we are in a culturally proficient environment, meaning we are with educators. This is an educator's culture. There are educator norms, like unspoken ones. And so really, it could be everything that you believe and do that enables you to identify with people like you and distinguishes differences. All right. So a culture code, again, an example of a culture code is basically knowing the classifications of some of your students and really getting to know them at a different level. Now, I'm not going to do this activity, but this is a slide that I would love for you to go back to. I started to take it out, but I wanted to leave it in because when you are at home and you're thinking about like, what is in a name? When we think about our students, sometimes we just don't say their names right. I don't know, I was a classroom teacher for a little over 7 years, and I know it was a time or two or three or four, I don't know how many times, but there are many times that I was like, I really don't know how to say this student's name. But one of the easiest ways to start building a culturally proficient environment in your classroom is to really do your best to learn your students' names and not renaming them. And so, for example, if Christopher was like, Christopher is my name, then if I was like, oh, can I call you Chris? And he was like, no. Then I would say, okay, Christopher. And then I would just have to adjust instead of having the student adjust to me. Instead of saying, oh, I don't like to call you Christopher, I'm just going to call you Chris. Well, that's kind of a culturally non-proficient environment. So, it's just something that simple. And we think like, well, it's just, me trying to get through roll and I'm going to mispronounce the name. So one of the things that I do, I say, you know what? I'm probably going to say it wrong a few times, but if you keep helping me, I'm going to get it. And it makes the world of difference with students. But think about the naming, the whole concept of naming. It can literally humanize or dehumanize. And so we want to ensure that our students are feeling their humanity. And especially in this distance learning environment, it's the hardest thing. I couldn't imagine teaching all day and having to get to know students in this manner. And so my hat is off to all students, or all teachers and students that are participating. And then lastly, think about the story of your own name. Do you know the significance of your name? And I just encourage you to dive into it. All right, so these are a couple of slides that are just going to give you some dictionary definitions about segregation and exclusion and kind of what goes along with it. There's some definitions about racism and ethnocentrism, sexism and heterosexism, and these are things that sometimes we don't really think about, but we should consider when we are building the culture in our particular classroom. And I know that sometimes when we are on the road to change and kind of changing and looking at some of our practices, sometimes we are like this little man here. We start off resisting. Many of you are in this particular program, kicking and screaming. You don't want to be here. But at the end of the day, the goal is to ensure that you are receiving these transforming ideas that really transform the way you look at your classrooms, your students, and then ultimately the world around you. The things that I'm talking about and the things that I taught in the class at Redlands is they're not just skills that you're going to use just in your classroom, but they're skills that when it comes to diversity and ethics, it's something that you really have to be. And it's something that you become where you start looking at how you do things and what your response to things that happen in life are. Because I understand that change is difficult. It presses us out of our comfort zone. Some of you are uncomfortable already. And I've just talked a little bit about race and diversity and inclusion because some of you have decided, well, that's not me. And some of you have decided that I'm just here. You know, what did that player say when he went to the that thing that they have after the game? What's that thing called? Somebody want to help me?
Press conference?
That's it. The press conference. What did he say? I'm just here so I won't get fined, right? And so some of you are here and that's what you're thinking. I'm just here because I have to be. I don't want to get fined. I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm just here. But the thing about change is that when you're truly taking it in, it's really for the better or the worse, but it's all in how you view it. It's all in what your perspective is. And so as you're looking at like diversity and building culturally proficient environments, being flexible is key. And you're like, well, whatever, I'm still on the fence, lady. Thanks for joining us today. And that's fine. But just know that change definitely happens in your heart before you see it. And so just know that I'm just here to put you on the road. And if you're already on the road, I'm here to push you along. And so let's just dive a little bit deeper into culture. Because think about this. If a student's culture is valued in a school setting, they're more likely to engage in academic tasks. Because if a staff member's culture is valued, they feel valued and their responses to challenges will change. So think about it. You've had those bosses before where you're like, they don't care anything about me. So why am I going to do this extra stuff? They don't really, they're not really interested in what I'm interested in, or they act like they don't care. And that's how, you respond to them because of how they respond to you. So when we think about our students, the more that we value where they come from and get to know them at their base level, the more likely they are to turn in your homework. The more likely they are to turn their cameras on when you're teaching the class or you're not teaching to black screens. The more they know that you actually care and they interact with you in a way that will cause them to really learn the content that you're teaching. So Zaretta Hammond, who wrote a book about neuropsychology and culture and change, she talks about 3 different levels of culture. And again, I know I'm moving a little fast. You can drop a question in the chat that you have for me. And then also you are going to get this PowerPoint after this presentation. But the 3 levels of culture, the surface level is something that we've done in schools traditionally. We observe music, we talk about music, we talk about food, we talk about holidays. And that carries a low emotional charge, just like your activity that you did a while ago. What did you do over winter break? That was a surface culture question. I mean, it wasn't anything deeper. Now, the shallow culture, getting a little bit more, going a little bit further, are the unspoken rules around everyday social interactions and norms. So it's like attitudes towards elders, personal space between people, rules about eye contact. This type of culture, it carries some emotional charge, but not too much. Now, deep culture, I mean, we're out here in the water now. This is talking about the knowledge, the unconscious assumptions that govern our worldviews. So ethics, spirituality, politics, health, theories of group harmony, this carries an intense emotional charge. Now, many of you know that, you've either been in the classroom for a little while or you're just coming into the classroom. Could you imagine what our schools would have looked like this past November during the election season? I mean, that was probably one of the most intense times in modern day history, or even prior to the inauguration, when we think about what happened at the Capitol building in early January. The way that our students were expressing their levels of deep culture was very uncomfortable for some. I have connections with many teachers across districts whose principals did not even want to encounter a level of deep culture. So they told their teachers not to talk about it at all. And as a person that, you know, is a proponent for leading in diverse communities, that's like the worst thing that you can do. Because if you're telling your students that they can't talk about what they feel and how they want to respond and navigate those difficult conversations, this totally doesn't build, it's the antithesis of a culturally diverse and proficient classroom. You know, now I'm going to caution you. If you're going to allow them to talk, you're going to have to be a person that doesn't take sides. And that's what I would tell my educators in my building. You can discuss it, you can facilitate a great discussion, but you can't take sides. I know you have an opinion, I know you want to say something, but you just can't. And so when you're building these different levels of culture in your classrooms, you really enable your students to learn at a deeper level. You know what they're thinking, you're able to assign them work according to where they are. And then at the end of the day, you're happier because you're less frustrated that your students are not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not coming to class, they're not doing their work, but they are responding to you at a different level because you're treating them differently and at a different level. So just a reflection question of what does your site or your office culture look like? Is it one of caring? Is it one of concern? What does it feel like? How do students respond to difference? Is it something that is like truly unspoken? Of course, in this virtual world, it's a little harder to tell exactly what it feels and looks like. But if you think about it, values, beliefs breed customs, customs breed values, and values breed attitudes. And it's like a cycle. But again, we're talking about culture because if we're trying to get to the point where we are having diverse conversations and we're really proponents of diversity and inclusion, it is something that we're going to have to think about. So again, I'm giving you a lot to think about in a very little bit of time, but I really want you to hone in on reflection of self and what does it look like for you in these environments. So some characteristics of a culturally responsive or a culturally proficient environment, it really talks about like having a positive perspective on all staff, parents, and their families. Communication of high expectations for all students. Learning within the context of culture is important because again, you need to know where your students are coming from, what kind of prior knowledge they're bringing into the classroom, and then that way you're able to meet them where they are. I had a class one time where I had a teacher credentialing student say, well, can't the students just leave their culture like at the door? I mean, I don't even see culture. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. You walked in here. I didn't tell you to leave yourself outside. I let you walk your whole self in here. And so it's just another thing for us to really realize that our students cannot leave parts of themselves outside of the classroom, but they bring in their whole self. And if you think about it, if you have a class of 36, right? And you think about like their parents, their grandparents, their siblings, their upbringing, like they're bringing all those people into class with them in a sense, right? Like I talked to you about my grandma. There are things that I say and do, and I'm just like, that was the puppy. Sorry, barking. You know, I bring them all with me wherever I go. Chris knows the story about this puppy. Sidebar, guys. Whew. My daughter almost wore me thin, wanting a puppy. We got her a puppy. She's 4 months old and she's 40 pounds. She's a big dog. Yeah. She's a Rottweiler that is about 3.5 feet tall on her hind legs. So yeah, so much for the puppy. Okay. So going back to culture again, they're bringing everything inside the classroom. So just like right now, we're in this virtual environment, like you literally, I mean, the students are literally bringing their culture in because they're at home. So they're bringing everything that they are inside of your classroom. And so instead of trying to manipulate what they're bringing, the best way that you can do that is help your students learn within the context of their culture. It's keeping up on what's happening in the neighborhood of the school that you teach. Are the kids playing sports right now? Are they not playing sports? You know, what's the new hot song? Are you going to use that for your break time music? You know, my kids, my personal kids, are my #1 source of teenage information. And that's how I stay up on culture when it comes to what's going on with teenagers. Like, so what's the new hot song? What's the new dance? You know, sometimes I can't do the dance, but you know, it's okay. My students used to get a kick out of me trying. And so it's like, find you a teenager, you know, that is in with the culture if you don't have one, because that helps you to get your students to learn within the context of the culture, because then they're able to make the connections. And making the connections are so big for students, because again, that's how they're able to learn your material, because they need to be able to connect it to something. Have you ever learned something in isolation and you were like, I'm never going to even use that, so why do I need to know? So same with our students, that they don't want to know. They don't care to know. So if you teach them why it's important and the why behind it, that way you can get them to learn within the culture, and then you have the ability to have that student-centered instruction. If it's good for students, it's good for me. Culturally mediated instruction, again, it's going back to what's going on in the world, what's hot, what's not. It helps you to reshape your curriculum. And then as a teacher or a principal or whichever role you play, you should be the facilitator of learning so that your students are able to adapt to where you are and what you need them to learn. Now, these points came from Ladson Billings, who is an amazing educator who writes a lot about culturally responsive and culturally proficient environments. So in thinking about vision and values, this is also important because you cannot have characteristics of a culturally responsive environment if you first don't know who you are. So when I first started in this work of equity and inclusion and thinking about diversity, I really had to think about, like, what are my deeply held values? What are the values of the organizations that I have attached myself to through employment? And then also, what do we do as an organization or as a school that express what our values are? And if your value system is shaky, there's no way that you can cultivate the minds of our students. Because the thing about it is they need someone to go back to. They need someone that's solid. They need someone who kind of has an idea, that knows where they're going. And so I really encourage you to go back and think about, like, your vision and your why. Simon Sinek wrote a great book of knowing your why. And this is what this slide is all about, is like, is your why lining up with where you are? So like, for example, with teaching, why did you become a teacher? So my quick teacher story is I actually was going to school. I wanted to be an attorney. I got pregnant with my first son my first year of college. And I was like, there is no way that I can be a litigator and take care of a kid and be a single mom. So let me find something that I'm off on the weekends, I'm off on the holidays, and I'll just see what happens. Well, I actually became a teacher, loved it, because once I started subbing, I was like, oh yeah, I could do this. And then once I found out that special education existed and I could actually have meetings and really be an advocate for my students, I was like, it's the best of both worlds. Like, I can advocate for my students and give people the business, and I'm not in a courtroom, but I'm in a classroom and I'm helping kids and their futures. And so I kind of like merged passions. And so think about what your why is. Now, you may have come to teaching like me. It was kind of like an accident. I never said when I was in high school, I want to be a teacher. You know, it didn't sound appealing to me. But once I became one, and when I was, subbing, I was like, oh man, I could really do this. And so then my why changed. And so again, that whole vision and values, it kind of shifted. And so think about, what are your deeply held values and what landed you here? Because when you know that, then you're able to really change the environment. Because remember, that whole change thing, it's like a slope. You go kicking and screaming, but then you're like, oh, I can do this. And so that's what I really hope for you all today, that you really think about your why, think about where you've been, where you're going, where you desire to go, and how you desire to impact students. I'm not going to have you check your privilege, but I am going to have you do this at another time. It's a fun little activity that you can go online and do a short quiz and see how privileged you are, which I thought was quite funny, because I was like, I'm not privileged. I'm like the poster child of intersectionality. No, this quiz will give you a little bit about your privilege and how you can check it to see how you may have, an edge or not an edge. So lastly, some tools for change that I kind of want you to think about as you are, I gave you a whole bunch to think about. I told you I was going to give you something to reflect on, but I want you to think about how you can overcome some barriers, how you can use your why as a guiding principle to bring it into your classroom. And then also think about the continuum of change and how you may need to make some adjustments. And with those continuums of change, what essential elements do you need to bring to your classroom to ensure that you have that diversity, that inclusion, and that equity that you're really searching for? And then with those four, then you can move into intention, assessment, and then action. Now, you can't just go out and do anything without thinking about barriers. What are your principles? What's going to be your continuum of change? And what elements you need to get there. So, 30 minutes. And so I really hope that you enjoyed my short presentation. And then I can open it up if we have like a few minutes for questions.
I do really kind of like what you said about like how students can't just leave their culture at the door. Like they take it in with them, and like it is very clearly like emulated through the people that they interact with and how they interact with you. And not necessarily a question. I really just kind of liked that reminder of just like you have to kind of just embrace all of them individually as they come through your door. So thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, they're different. I mean, and kids these days, whew.
Well, we bring our own, so why wouldn't they bring their own culture in? Because we now, in a way, we influence with whatever we believe. So
that's what I say, because I'm bringing me wherever I go. I can't separate my personality and what I bring from my teaching style. All right, well, thank you so much for allowing me to come in and spend a little bit of time with you on this Thursday afternoon. And then I will send Christopher over the slide presentation so that you can go back and reflect on those questions. And then I'll also put my email in there. So if you think of something later, you can just send me an email.
Fantastic. So if you guys could do me a favor, unmute for a quick sec and just give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McNair.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so she'll send all that to me, and you guys will have access to all of this. And I do want to do a quick commercial. If you are interested in pursuing further education, I highly recommend University of Redlands. That's where I'm at right now. It's just a quick couple of years, and I can tell you I've had phenomenal instructors like Dr. McNair, the newly retired assistant superintendent of Riverside County, has been my instructor for a couple of classes, and now the assistant superintendent of Redlands Unified is my teacher for my class, my personnel class at which I have on Wednesday nights. So they really connect you with people who are fantastic with education and experience, and people who are doing the job right now. There's nothing like having somebody like Mauricio tell you what his day was like, before he came into the classroom. So, so fantastic. So we are going to take a quick 5-minute break. And so I encourage you stand up, stretch, and then we will conclude the remainder of our training. We are going to now move into, not this video again. There we go. So we're going to cover, we have been covering all of the CSTPs this year. We are going to continue on with CSTP number 4, which is planning instruction and designing learning experiences for all students. And so I'm going to turn it over to Chanel, Mary, and Christian. And you guys need anything from me or have any questions before we start? No? All right. So let me stop sharing my screen and then I was never sharing my screen, right? Nope. All right. It happens to the best of us. So that being said, I'm going to give it to Mary, Chanel, and Christian. And it's all yours, guys.
So our presentation, of course, CSTP 4, which is planning, instruction, and designing learning experiences for all students. So while you guys are joining, while everyone's joining in, I'm going to go ahead and have you post, kind of like Padlet on NearPod. What do you think it means to design learning experiences for all students? So in essence, what do you think CSTP 4 is talking about? I'm going to read through some of these here. Make them feel welcome, that you are happy they are there today and now. Planning lessons that consider all students' needs, abilities, and backgrounds, right? Very good. Meeting the needs of all types of learners and at different levels, right? Awesome. Something that all students can participate in. I believe all students means making your class as diverse as possible for all students to learn comfortably. Very good. Develop engagement activities inclusive of all students' interests and needs. Yes. So CSTP 4 is pretty much all of these things, right? Each point kind of goes further into how you can better plan your lessons and your goals so that you're including all students.
So the California Standard for Teaching Professions focuses on your knowledge of students' personal and academic interests in connection with the class lessons. As an instructor, your knowledge of students' interests supports collaborations to establish and articulate learning goals specific to your sector or industry. This collaboration supports cohesive short and long-term lesson planning and allows you to strategize and adapt lessons and instruction materials to meet learning standards for students, to meet them where they are. So this is a broad review of what CSTP 4 all encompasses. And then we'll go through and break down each of the 5 subpoints of our point.
Yes. So I'll handle 4.1 and 4.2. So 4.1 is using knowledge of students' academic readiness, language proficiency, cultural background, and individual development to plan instruction. So allowing these factors to really guide and plan your instruction out. These are kind of the main points, the main questions you can ask yourself. How do I, or why do I, and I'll just read through these real quick. Incorporate students' prior knowledge and experience in my curriculum and instructional planning. Use knowledge of my students' lives, their families, and their communities to inform my planning of curriculum and instruction. Use knowledge of my students' individual, cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development to plan instruction and make appropriate adaptations to meet students' unique needs. That was a mouthful. Plan lessons and units that promote access to academic content standards for all students. Use knowledge of my English learners' levels of language proficiency to plan instruction that supports the subject matter learning and academic language development, and use knowledge of my students' diverse learning needs to plan instruction that supports their learning. that was a lot. So kind of these points, they all tie back to that same thing, right? How are you planning your instruction so that it's basically including all those diverse cultures and personalities and language barriers and all those things? How do you break all that down so that you're making your lessons accessible to all those students, right? And so one way that I like to do this in my classes, an example I have is a student survey. So there's a lot of ways you can gather this data, right? So you can reach out to counselors, the students' other teachers or previous teachers. You can reach out to them. But a great way is to have the students tell you themselves, right? So at the beginning of the year and also at the end of the year, I put out this student survey. So on Google Forms, my students log in on the first day, and I ask them a lot of questions about, how they like to learn, their background, their prior experience, and of course, their interests. So then I use that data to kind of better plan out the instructions I'm going to give for the year. And I'll show you kind of what this looks like. So these are some screenshots of this survey that I put out at the beginning of this year for my game design class. You can see it's got some basic questions on there. So what device are you using for class? And 60% of them are on Chromebooks, 27 on Windows, a smaller percentage on Apple, and then everything else kind of goes down to like tablets and phones, things like that. All right, so that's helpful to know because right away I know what kind of software are they going to have access to. Are most of them on fancy computers like Windows or Macs that they can have access to a lot of software that's used in my class? No, most of them are on Chromebooks, and I'm sure this is the same across all of your classes, right? Most of them are just on whatever was given to them by the school. They don't have access to more advanced computers, right? Next up, my computer skills, they're kind of in the middle. So most of the class is at a 3. My drawing skills, that's kind of important for some of the stuff we do. They're kind of lower at a 2. I'm asking them about their game design experience, right? I also ask if they plan to move on to the next course, if they plan on taking game design 1 and 2 to complete the pathway. That's just helpful for me to see at the beginning of the year because I send a survey out at the beginning and then a modified version at the end of the year that asks the same question. And that helps me see, is the student's interest, do I get more students wanting to continue after the course, or is it falling off? Is there something I need to change, right? Why are you taking the class? And I have them check any that applies. So do they love video games and they want to design them? Do they want college credits? Did their counselor just throw them in and they have no interest? Did it seem like an easy class, or is Mr. Bonilla the best teacher ever? You can say 22 of them think that I am the best teacher ever, right? So this is just kind of a helpful way for me to gauge the room, right? I want to feel out, do the students in this period, and like every period is different, but do they like this class? Do they enjoy being in here? What can I do to gain more interest from them and to get them to participate more and engage with the content more? All right. Do you enjoy distance learning? You can see many of them do not, right? Basically 80% of them do not. And then finally, the comments section, which is very important. So is there anything else I should know about that will help me make this class better for you? Right? You can see a lot of them put no, I like this class, or no comments, right? But the students who do provide stuff, they often provide really useful information to know. So sometimes I get students talking about, oh, I think I have ADHD, so I might need you to kind of push me more to focus. Different things like that, right? You can see how do you take this data and turn it into lesson plans, right? How do you kind of incorporate this? Well, I have just a few examples here. So one of the students right here in red is talking about they love the concept of the game format. They want to make a gaming company, and that's why they're in the class. So I know, okay, this student really wants to make a gaming company, so they're going to be very interested in the business side of the gaming industry, right? They want to know more about the business side, less about the actual development. So that's giving me something right there. Another student talking about they use Khan Academy to code, and they know a little bit about HTML and CSS. Okay, so that student likes to use Khan Academy, so maybe some assignments on there. And they're also familiar with HTML and CSS. So they might want more advanced topics. Not only that, I know that student will be great to pair with a weaker student who's less familiar with those two things in a group activity, right? And then when I was asking them about why are they taking this class, for this student, they put They know the coding language Lua, so maybe the student might want to do a presentation on it and share with the class. You know, if they felt compelled enough to write that in the comment section, then they probably want me to know that so they can talk about it further down the road. So this is just some ideas of ways to incorporate their interests and some of their experience to gauge that already at the beginning of the school year. Additionally, 4.1 is referring to also the formal tests that are going to be in your student database. So things like the LPAC and IEPs. Of course, LPAC is referring to the English language proficiency assessments for California. And it used to be called something else, but they changed it back in 2018. And basically that just is for any students who English is their second language. They have to take that test, and then that'll tell you, how proficient are they in English. And then you're all familiar with IEPs and 504s. These are things that we must look into, and we're required to make accommodations for these students. So the student survey is great, but it's also important to check if you're using Aries or Zangle, to check on there for your students with IEPs, 504s, and your students who have ESL, right? Their English is their second language. So all of these things can be referred to kind of get you back on that 4.1 track for including that in your classes. All right, and then 4.2 is talking about establishing and articulating goals for student learning. So a lot shorter than 4.1, but questions to ask yourself. I'm not going to read all of these because I want to make sure we have enough time for all the other points, but basically this is going to go over, building on strengths and interests, and how do you establish high expectations for learning? That's the big key here. How do you let them know what your expectations are, establish those goals so they can work on them throughout the year, right? Don't just leave them blind because they're not going to know exactly what you're looking for. So an example I have for 4.2 is rubrics. So a rubric is obviously a type of scoring guide that assesses and articulates specific components and expectations for an assignment. And I have some examples here. This is kind of a more simplified essay rubric that I found online. You can see there's not much to it, probably didn't take that long to come up with. But one of the points I wanted to also bring up talking about this rubric is the way it's worded is important. This is something I always like to do for my classes. You can see it's worded at beginner through expert. It's not terrible through good, right? So it's basically a good, better, best approach. And I like that because sometimes the students can get discouraged if maybe your feedback's not so great to them, and that might kind of set them up for failure, right? They might kind of be discouraged and not want to work on it anymore. But I like this because you're not saying, oh, this is terrible if they get a 1. You're saying this is a very beginner. I think you can do a lot better, right? So that I just like the wording on that I point that out. You can also go really crazy with rubrics. You can see this is kind of a lot larger rubric that I found online. It's totally up to you. I kind of like to do kind of in between. I don't go this basic, but I'll give them maybe a few more points, kind of more similar to this. And if you're not incorporating rubrics in your classroom, they're very easy to do. I think Google Classroom added this feature last year, I want to say. So when I noticed it showed up, and it is amazing. It's really quick. You can create a rubric on there. Not only is it great for the students, but it makes grading go by a lot quicker because you just click the boxes to give them their score. It totals up for you. All right, so before we head to the other points, I just wanted you guys to post what are some examples that you're using in your classrooms? So besides students' surveys or rubrics, is there anything else that maybe you can share with everyone that you're already using to kind of incorporate these points?
There we go.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Meg and Jeff. So a similar survey at the beginning of the year to gauge the interest and where they plan to take the knowledge in their career. Awesome. Make extra content available for students who work ahead. I really like that. Kind of, otherwise they might get bored, right? Watch a video of how to figure out their interests in a bubble map. And then you find out where they like to spend their free time. Awesome. Assignments with student choice, that works really well too. Google rubrics. Awesome. Student choice and explain afterwards. So great. And then when we post these slides, I will make sure that these are included for you to kind of refer back to, so you can incorporate them if you're not already. All right, so don't want to waste too much time on my points, so I'm going to give it over to Mary.
So I have 4.3 and 4.4, and the focus of 4.3 is developing and sequencing long-term and short-term instructional plans to support student learning. And then the breakdown before the questions you ask yourself, how do I, why do I? Design an instructional program that considers the long-term and the short-term. Use assessment results for long-term and short-term planning. Incorporate diverse subject matter perspectives in my planning. Select and sequence instructional strategies appropriate to the complexity of that word, of the lesson content and to student learning needs. Plan an instructional program that supports students' second language learning and diverse learning needs. Incorporate my professional expertise and knowledge of my students into a prescribed curriculum, pace, and district assessment calendar. Collaborate with colleagues to make instructional decisions. Design instruction so that students participate in setting and achieving their individual learning goals. We'll focus on that last one. That was a mouthful. You can change it, Christian. So I teach career exploration to middle school students, and mine is a bit different from the ROP pathways at the high school level. So in my particular program, they get exposed to anywhere between 10 and 15 different career modules. So we can kind of zone in on their interests. So then when they do get to the high school level, they have more of an idea of an ROP pathway that they are actually interested in when they choose that ROP pathway. So these are some things that I do as short-term goals to get them prepared for the unit that I'm teaching. So I did not do this from the beginning as a first-year teacher, and noticed that there was a lot of confusion with some of the terms, the verbiage being used, and a lot of understanding that needed to be explained to the students before we could go on with the lesson. So I started incorporating terms before I even started the unit. And we do this as a class. So it opens up a discussion board for us, really, and the students can either speak what they think the word means and just define it in their own words, or they can look it up, and sometimes it can be kind of like a competition. And based upon either how fast this goes, where the discussion goes with the terms when we are looking them up, I can gauge how much they understand the content, and then where I can go with the unit. Can I condense it more? Can I add more material? Or maybe I just need to break up that unit into smaller chunks and we just won't get to all of it. So this really gives me an idea of where they're at. So that's one short-term goal that I do leading to our long-term process. You can change the slide, Christian. And then the second thing that I do, since I am so focused on teaching them a career path that they are actually interested in and that they can develop a passion for. The reason we are starting the ROP program at such a young base in middle school, because a lot of times they're like, well, why are we even looking at careers? So I start my first unit off in identity, and I describe to them. So here it shows, I know you guys can't read it, but it shows the definitions for those words like skills, talents, successes, strengths, interests. And a lot of times the students get confused and they'll interchange those words. So I give them a clear definition of that, and then I allow them time to really reflect and focus and fill this out. This is something that they're going to use as they start to see, what do I want to explore? And then I have this information and I can line it up with careers that the whole class is probably really leaning towards in an interest. And then that way it's going to further our engagement. So I can focus on those careers, especially with distance learning and having to condense so much material. You can change the slide. Thanks, Christian. So this is just kind of like a little roadmap I put together for short-term goals that lead to their long-term successes. So at the top, I have short-term goals outlined, like the Who Am I questionnaire that I showed you previously, plus a plethora of self-assessments that we do. And that applies to introductions in various careers, which applies to career pathways that are available. So I'm at the Yucaipa School District. So I try to line it up with career pathways available for them at Yucaipa High School. And then I link all this with other assignments of knowledge of self, careers, and their pathways to career possibilities of interest. So then we go from there, which will all culminate at the end in my long-term goal for them, a vision board and a career portfolio that goes together. So by the time they leave my class, they have an outlined pathway for a huge dream career, right? Something that way in the future, but they know what it is, right? They can taste it right now. They have ROP pathways available at the high school level. They have their own self-encouragement for themselves. So it's great to always, of course, encourage our students, number one, but I really want to teach them how to self-encourage themselves, to be excited about their own passion, and then be equipped with the resources to navigate that dream career. And then, of course, if they choose to change it, they have a plethora of resources to change that. They have people to tap into and like, okay, this is what I'm interested in now. Didn't know this existed. How do I go about this? You can change it, Christian. And so the breakdown for this would be short-term goals sequence to achieving long-term goal standards. Planning includes breaking down knowledge, skills, and abilities into logically sequenced lessons. Teacher sequences short-term lesson plans to achieve a long-term learning goal. 4.4 is planning instruction that incorporates appropriate strategies to meet the learning needs of all students. And I don't know where we are on time, so we'll see how much of a mouthful this is, but these are the same how do I, why do I questions for specifically that. Ensure that each instructional strategy is related to the learning goals. With middle school students, we can really quickly get off topic. So I have learned to give myself a time limit and kind of keep a timer to gauge that. I want to encourage the socialization, especially with distance learning, but I have learned I need to keep a timer. Planning instruction to allow enough time for student learning, review, and assessment. Use my knowledge of subject matter and my students to plan and appropriately pace instructional activities within a lesson and over time. Check for understanding, prepare for adjustments, remediate or accelerate instruction, and individualize when appropriate. Address the ELD standards appropriately based on my English learners' levels of language acquisition. Address the IEP goals and objectives of my students with special needs. Select materials, resources, and technologies to support the learning needs of English learners and students with special needs. So I kind of grouped this real quick together. With lesson plans, instructional strategies are chosen so that each student can engage with the content in a way that leads to mastery. So this goes along with a lot of student choice. And I try to make my lessons at least 2 choices, if not more, and allowing enough time for student learning. So really gauging where we're going. Sometimes I can really shorten it and I can just go into the next point. And sometimes I really have to take that extra time. And I'm really able to gauge that based upon my terms. It has helped me immensely. Repetition is a big one. Sometimes this can get boring and not engage as many students. So I'm figuring out ways to incorporate and keep their interest. But at the same time, this has been super important for the other half of my students that need to hear it again. Introduce new vocabulary, demonstrate, so provide videos of demonstrations students can refer back to. Allow students to present mastered content in various different ways, whether that be presentations, just verbal explanations, slideshow presentations, a video, just a quick Q&A discussion. And then I do a lot of quizzes that aren't graded. I know I heard that somewhere here in TIP, and that's when I started it. I do a lot of Kahoot games, and my fellow people working with me on CSTP4 have taught me all the games in NearPod now, so I'm gonna start using those. And then truly being available for students who need extra support. So I know specifically for me telling my students on a regular daily basis about my office hours, that repetition has worked very well for my students to feel welcome and wanted to come to office hours. And when I consistently do that on a regular basis, my office hours will be flooded. And I just appreciate, you know, them coming in and making up those missing assignments. And I continuously let them know, you know, 5 minutes, office hours is open till 2 o'clock. If you come in at 1:50, you know, it's not a big deal. And then just an idea, I use the picker wheel to encourage students being present and aware that they could be called on. Another thing I got from TIP. You can go ahead and change it, Christian. And then my question for you guys, if you would like to add on to this, are lessons that engage the students. What is a strategy that you are using during distance learning to engage your students? And are you receiving positive results from it? So this can kind of just give us resource of ideas. I love it. I'm just getting familiar. Well, I use NearPod, but I'm getting familiar with making my own NearPods. So I just started thinking too, they don't have to be so long. So I love daily warm-ups in NearPod. Google Earth has some great programs, like what is your favorite place in the world? Gonna have to check that out. Visual check for understanding. Yes, give me a thumbs up, right? Physically, like, let me see you. Or even in chat, you know they're paying attention. I use Padlet for critiquing artwork. Students can respond to each other. Oh, I love that they can respond to each other. Competitive games like Jeopardy, gonna have to try that one out. And Kahoot can earn extra credit on their larger exams projects. Forcing everyone to find an object for every letter of the alphabet. We're gonna do that. Let the students share daily events with you, getting them to interact when screens are not on. Part of my weekly warm-up is straight talk. We discuss current events and what they think. That's a great idea. So I see some Padlet here. I'm gonna have to see what Padlet's all about. Use the Jamboard. Polls, yes, polls are a great one. I love answering questions and being able to gauge everybody else's percentages there. All right, awesome. Thanks, you guys. This will also stay up just like the other NearPod post.
All right, everyone. And then we're going to close out with our last point, which is 4.5, adapting instructional plans and curricular materials to meet assessed learning needs of all students. So on the next slide, you're going to find a couple of points, once again, based off of the questions that you would ask yourself to see, am I fulfilling this CSTP point? Am I modifying my instructional plans? Do I reteach missing concepts, methods, or skills? How do I incorporate further work in future instruction? How do I adapt lessons in response to observed difficulties during the lesson? Some of these observable adaptations might be supplying different types of examples, making the examples that you link to your lesson more relatable for your students. So 4.1, an earlier point, ties into this. If you have prior background knowledge about your students personally, what their interests are, what their academic background is, if you are teaching a course that involves a lot of math or a lot of arithmetic, do they easily get frustrated when it comes to more of the concrete sciences, when it comes to science and math, or do they do really well with group work? Determine before, during, and after a lesson whether students are making progress toward learning goals. Being in distance learning, that may look different, but as a first-year teacher, you're not exactly sure what those are. So how do you do this? So this might look like modifying lessons. Modifications might look like using prior student knowledge to form relatable concepts to skills students need to reach expected goals. So some of that might be, that might look like, in my class, my students, as a first-year teacher, they previously had culinary arts ROP, which for them previously was Foods 1 and Foods 2. Without prior knowledge of what it is that my predecessors taught them, I don't know what it is that my advanced level students already know, versus I can start my first year level 1 students out teaching them the basics that I see fit. So what it is that I've done to kind of modify my lesson plan for my advanced students who may not have all of the primary skills and knowledge that I think that they should, I know that they have an interest in things like anime culture. One of my students is really a big Adventure Time fan, and the class is also an Adventure Time fan. So they want to make food from some of their favorite anime shows from Adventure Time. So I'm using that in future lessons to incorporate some of their math. They want to make ramen and they want to make sandwiches from their favorite shows. So if you want to remake these things or replicate these things in reality, let's figure out what ingredients you need and how to make them. Let's figure out what it would cost for you to replicate these things, because you can't just make all these viral videos from YouTube and Instagram and other social media outlets without understanding the cost of making these things. It may even look like adapting to responding signs of student misunderstanding. We've come out of last semester with students being in distance learning for a full semester. And for the first time, a lot of us have experienced having students not have a final. So a lot of our districts sent out notification towards the end of the semester saying, hey, adapt your grades as you see fit. The F rate and the D rate right now is astronomical. Make it work for your lessons, make it work for your students. So one adaptation I've had is we weren't able to cover a lot of the material last semester that I intended to. So what I've done is incorporate some of those concepts and lessons that we weren't able to get into future lessons that I still have planned for second semester. That way we don't fall behind, and my students who have been staying on top of their lessons throughout the first semester don't become penalized and have to go back and relearn concepts that they've already mastered, but they continue to build on that and they're continuing to be challenged with new concepts. Meanwhile, some of my students who maybe struggled the first semester for whatever reason, they have an opportunity to build on those concepts because they've briefly heard about them. And we have that motivating factor to continue moving and learning new things as well. So next slide. I have an example, and I'm going to share my screen at this point. Yes, right here. Really quick, I'll take over for Christian. So one adaptation from last semester that I have is when it came time for finals, I really wanted my students to have something fun to do. We're so concerned this semester about social emotional learning and connectivity with us being in distance learning. And I really want to emphasize to my students how not only cooking is something that they can enjoy for themselves, but another way to bring in the people that they care about, even while in social distance. So for their final, I had them make holiday cookies for whatever it is that they felt like they wanted to observe. But instead of calling them explicitly holiday cookies, I made the theme on giving flowers. Because towards the end of the semester, we were focused on the grain wheat and how wheat is processed, how wheat is grown, how wheat is one of the largest staple foods that's produced across the world. And what better to teach students during a global pandemic and a foods class, but how to use staple goods and how to be able to produce foods based off of staple foods. So we chose wheat and flour. And I had the kids make and decorate cookies to gift to someone that they really appreciate and love. So I had them make videos, to make it accessible to students, they had the option to either draw their cookies that they would decorate if they could not make them, and then to get students more excited about the project. If they were able to cook, then they were able to actually bake their cookies, and they were awarded double points for being able to cook. So to motivate students to be able to get from behind the screen and actually do more of the hands-on approach for my CTE course, I gave them that option since I couldn't obligate them. So here's all of their videos and their photos. And because it was for the students and it was made public, students from other classes could go see what other classes were working on. So this was also an opportunity for me to give my level 1 students a little bit more of a challenge to see what the level 2 students would be working on for their final as well. So there's that. And then Christian will take over again. So in a few moments, everyone, you'll see, there you go, your Flipgrid return. And so now you have a collaborative moment. I want you to share with me, we've all gone through our first semester of distance learning. So pat on the back, congratulations to you. What are some ways that you've adapted your course learning objectives or your materials during the 2020-21 academic year so far? In your experience, what learning adjustments and curriculum material adjustments work well for you and work well for your industry? So I've learned that YouTube videos, social media videos, viral videos help get the students engaged. They help give students a resource of their own to go to and find recipes, find different foods that they're interested in, different cultures, different cuisines. And then they're able to come to me and say, Chef, have you seen this video? Or do you know that they eat this in this culture? Or you say that you like to travel and you've been this place. Have you seen this? Or have you eaten this thing? And so it continues to foster that culture of community, even while in distance learning. So I'm excited to hear what it is that you all have done. And then we have a short game after this. So Jeff has replaced his hands-on lab activities with digital-based lessons that are stimulating. Very good. So the students still have an opportunity to engage and share with other students in a classroom-like facilitated manner, even though we're not in person. Good job, Jeff. What else do we have? Ashley has had her students create Flipgrid videos to use and explain their hands-on learning approach through assignments at home. Very good. So allow them to interact with technology, but still be able to share with one another. I love Flipgrid. Meg has done a lot more demos and virtual labs, very similar to how it is that I do my videos and my ROP classes for foods. Previously recorded lessons really helped me feel like I'm more organized and I'm giving my students the bare requirement that they need. Certainly, like Mary said earlier, certain periods are way more talkative and it's way easy to get off topic. And while you want the students to engage and you want them to talk and share, a couple days makes all of the difference in a lesson falling behind, especially if it's one that some of your students may not engage with. So Erin is sharing, Alexis has also adapted multiple ways for expressing learning, such as letting the students post on Flipgrid videos or doing slides, writing their responses. In Aaron's course for first responders, he's shown a lot more videos so students can physically see what it is that he's talking about and what it is that he's seeing when they do their hands-on exercises. And so really being able to see demonstrations also makes it a little bit easier on you too, right? Alexis, Aaron, Meg, you have all of these videos that are at your disposal and you can demonstrate from many different ways how there are many different ways to skin a cat or any of the other wordplay. Deb has also shared, YouTube is a very common one. Having more choices with their assignments. Yes, very good. And then everyone, Christian, you can slide over. Please continue to collaborate on the board. But I also want you all to take just a quick minute. So for any of you who haven't used NearPod, I have found that the Time to Climb game that is in NearPod is very similar to Kahoot. And so if you all could log in, you're going to pick a character animal to play with. We have a short game. It's going to ask you a series of 5 questions and they'll be real easy. So choose your animal. Very nice. Get your name in. Once you see your avatar up, make sure that once you have put your name in and you've selected your animal, that you press start. It's at the very bottom of your screen. For some of us, if you're in full screen mode, you may not be able to see it. And then you should shortly after see your animated character along with everyone else. Okay. And I think, is that everyone? I think, there we go. Last couple players here. Okay, so we're gonna get started, everyone. First question is asking, which CSTP standard deals with student background knowledge? Would it be CSTP 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or 1.4? All right. And then you'll see your animated character climb. Alexis is in the lead. So let's see. Question number 2 is asking, which CSTP standard deals with establishing and articulating goals for student learning? Would that be CSTP 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, or 4.5? Nice job, everyone. All right, number 3. Which CSTP standard deals with developing and sequencing long-term and short-term instructional plans to support student learning? CSTP 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, or 4.5? All right, everyone. Question number 4 is asking, which CSTP deals with planning instruction that incorporates strategies and meets the learning needs of all students? 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, or 4.5? And then finally, everyone, which CSTP deals with adapting instructional plans and curricular materials to meet the assessed learning needs of all students? All right, everyone. So that's our last question. Let's see who reigns supreme in the climb. David, of course, is our first place winner. In second place, Lance, and in third place, Scott. So congratulations to the top 3 scorers, and congratulations to all of you for placing and playing along. I appreciate it. And then
we don't have to read this. This is just our conclusion slide, so you can kind of have a quick reference to all of the subpoints of CSTP4. But all right, thanks everyone.
All right, thank you guys. Good job, fantastic job. And so we're just going to wrap up a couple things and then we are done. So next up for CSTP number 5 is going to be Virginia, Jeff, Larry, and Mike. And you say, well, why is there 4 of you? I'll get to that in 1 second. And believe it or not, we only have 3 tips left this year. We have the one next month in February. We will not do one in March because of spring break. And then we have April and May, and we are done for the year. So the reason why we have 4 people helping with our next session in February is we're going to actually split you up. Now that we have some assistants with Chris and Ashley and Scott, we're going to split you up next month. So all of the first year teachers will be with Ashley and David, and then Larry and Mike, you will work together to present. However, all 4 of you are going to work together to teach the same thing, but I'm going to have Larry and Mike, you guys will take over in doing that for the first year teachers. And then the second year teachers will be with Scott and Chris Barta and Jeff and Virginia. You guys will present that. So again, the 4 of you, we will work together. You'll all create the same thing like these 3 teachers just did, but then we'll split you up and you guys will be able to just teach that section to your teachers that have started with you this year or with you last year. And so kind of it gives us a way to be a little bit more personable for the next time. And so last thing I'm asking you to do, please do me a favor. For your exit ticket, for me to count that you were here in attendance, please type in chat, and we kind of did this already, but please type in chat your best digital or physical engagement strategy, which you have done this year so far. And if you don't have any questions, you go ahead and type in chat your answer, what your best digital or physical strategy was, and then we are done, and we will see you next time. Yay! Good job, you guys.